Have you ever sized someone up in a split second, only to realize you were dead wrong? Imagine a world where a frayed t-shirt hides a millionaire, a janitor's hands hold decades of grit, and a $2,500 bottle of wine becomes a lesson in humility. This isn't just a story about luxury. It's about the masks we wear and the truths we ignore. Before we unravel how a waitress in a knockoff blazer shattered her own illusions, hit subscribe and tap the bell. Trust me, you won't want to miss the twist that left San Francisco's elite speechless. The golden fork chandelier cast a golden glow over the dining room, its crystals refracting light onto polished silverware and starched white tablecloths. Emily adjusted her blazer, a cheap knockoff she'd bought to fit the part, and scanned the room. Another night of pretending, she thought. At 22, she'd mastered the art of blending in among San Francisco's elite. She could spot a Rolex from across the room, distinguish a Chanel bag from a counterfeit, and recite the wine list like a poem. To her, luxury was a language of labels, and she prided herself on fluency. Then he walked in. Tom Hanks, though Emily didn't know his name, wore a faded gray t-shirt and jeans frayed at the knees. His salt and pepper beard was untrimmed, and his hands bore faint scars, like he'd spent years gripping tools instead of smartphones. Emily's lip curled. Homeless? A tourist who got lost? She pasted on her professional smile and approached, pen poised over her notepad. Good evening, sir. Our prix menu starts at $350 per person. Tom glanced at the menu, then back at her. I'll have the Kobe beef. And a bottle of the '94 Margaux. Emily froze. The Margaux was $2,500. But his threadbare sleeves didn't match the order. Maybe he's bluffing? Are you sure? She blurted. We also have more modest options. The grilled chicken is excellent. Tom's eyes crinkled. Modest? For someone who can't afford luxury? The question stung. Emily straightened her shoulders. I'm just saying this is a place for people who appreciate real quality. Ah. Tom leaned back. And what makes someone real quality, Emily? She blinked. Her name tag was discreet, he'd noticed. Clothes, she said sharply. Manners. Knowing your place. Tom chuckled. My place? Interesting. He gestured at his t-shirt. What if I told you this was my favorite shirt? Emily's cheeks burned. A couple at the next table, a woman in a silk jumpsuit, a man with a Patek Philippe, snickered. Let them laugh, she thought. He's just a poser. But as she turned to leave, Tom added softly. You think upper class is a costume. What if it's a choice? The dining room hummed with the clink of crystal glasses. Emily returned to Tom's table with the Margaux, her hands trembling slightly. She poured the wine with practiced precision, avoiding his gaze. Tell me, Emily, Tom said, swirling the ruby liquid. Why do you assume I can't afford this? She stiffened. Your shirt. Your hands. He held them up, scars catching the light. These? Souvenirs from washing dishes at a diner when I was 16. Now they build apps. He sipped the wine. Delicious. Pity you'll never taste it. Emily's mouth opened, then closed. Apps? Before she could ask, a murmur rippled through the room. The silk jumpsuit woman leaned toward her companion, voice low but deliberate. How dare she judge him? She's just a glorified waitress. Emily flushed. They're talking about me. She glanced around. Other diners, men in Brioni suits, women dripping in Cartier, were nodding. The man with the Patek Philippe smirked. Kids these days think luxury is a price tag. Pathetic. Tom raised his glass. To assumptions, he said loudly. May they always taste bitter. The room fell silent. Emily's chest tightened. What is happening? Tom stood, his voice warm but cutting. You see labels, Emily. I see people. The man at table 7? He's a janitor who saved 30 years for this meal. The woman in Hermes? She volunteers at a soup kitchen. And me. He tapped his chest. I'm the guy who used to mop this floor. Emily's breath hitched. The founder of Stardine? Stardine isn't about caviar or crystal, Tom continued. It's about stories. But the Golden Fork, it's a museum. A place where people perform wealth, instead of living it. He tossed a black Amex on the table. Consider this my last supper here. The room erupted in whispers. Emily's vision blurred. She'd mocked the man who owned the restaurant, the man who could end her career. But Tom smiled. Don't look so scared. You've just given me a brilliant idea. The next morning, Emily sat on a bench outside the Golden Fork, its closed permanently sign gleaming in the fog. Her blazer, now stripped of its name tag, felt heavier than ever. A text from her roommate buzzed. Did you see the news? Stardine's buying the building. Rumor says they're turning it into a café. She didn't reply. Mind if I join you? Tom stood there holding 2 paper cups. No Rolex, no Margot, just steam rising from cheap coffee. Emily hesitated, then nodded. He handed her a cup. Black, right? You strike me as someone who likes control. Emily sipped. Bitter, no sugar. Just how she'd ordered it 100 times for her elite customers. Why are you here? She asked. To apologize. She blinked. You're sorry. For using you as a lesson. I could have told you who I was sooner. He gestured at the cafe across the street. A cozy hole in the wall with mismatched chairs and a pay-what-you-can sign. That's where I ate when I was homeless. The owner, Rosa, taught me that food isn't about foie gras. It's about feeding souls. Emily's throat tightened. I don't need a sob story. Good. Because I'm not asking you to cry. I'm asking you to lead. He pulled out a business card. Stardine's launching Common Ground. A chain where servers don't judge customers. We need someone to train them. Someone who's lived the mistake. Emily stared at the card. You want me to run it? You've got sharp eyes, kid. You just aimed them at the wrong things. 3 months later, Emily stood behind a reclaimed wood counter, steam curling from a freshly poured latte. The Golden Fork, or Common Ground as it was now called, smelled of cinnamon and second chances. Gone were the crystal chandeliers, replaced by string lights and potted herbs. Tables were scattered with flyers for poetry slams and free resume workshops. Your chime is Rosa, Emily said, sliding a mug to an elderly woman in a faded cardigan. Rosa, the cafe's namesake, grinned. Call me Rosa, Mija. And don't forget the honey. Emily laughed, something she'd rarely done at the old Golden Fork. She glanced at Tom, who was teaching a teenager how to grind coffee beans. His t-shirt today read, Humility is the new luxury. Hey, Emily. A construction worker in paint-splattered overalls leaned on the counter. Can I get a venti espresso? Coming right up, she said, ignoring the playful jab at her old obsession with labels. As she worked, she overheard snippets of conversations. A single mother discussing job interviews, a retired teacher mentoring a teen, Tom debating open-source software with a hoodie-clad programmer. Emily. She turned. A woman in a silk jumpsuit stood there, the same one who'd mocked her months ago. I'm sorry, the woman said quietly. About that night. You were just doing your job. Emily studied her. No makeup, hair in a messy bun, hands scrubbed free of diamond rings. What's your name? Claire. Claire, can I get you something? The lavender latte's popular. Claire hesitated. Actually, I'd like to volunteer here. If you'll have me. Emily smiled. We always need help. 1 year later, Emily stood at the window of Common Ground, watching rain streak down the glass. The cafe buzzed with the hum of a poetry slam, Claire reciting a piece about single motherhood, Tom nodding along in his Humility is the new luxury t-shirt, a teenager sketching in a notebook by the fireplace. Emily's fingers brushed the scarred countertop, now polished smooth by 1,000 elbows. Emily. Rosa called from the kitchen. You're needed at table 6. She turned, her blazer replaced by a Common Ground apron. Table 6 was a couple in their 70s, holding hands over a shared slice of pie. We'll take 2 coffees, the man said. And, could you tell us your story? The one about the Golden Fork. Emily hesitated. She'd told the story 100 times, but tonight it felt different. It started with a mistake, she began. I thought luxury meant perfection. Crystal chandeliers, Rolex watches. But Tom taught me it's about this. She gestured at the room. Claire's tear-streaked face, the teenager's pencil scratching, Tom's quiet laughter. Luxury is having the courage to be human. The woman squeezed her husband's hand. We used to eat at the Golden Fork. Never felt like this. Emily smiled. Because we're not performing here. We're alive. Later that night, as the cafe emptied, Tom lingered by the door. You've changed, he said. Emily wiped down the espresso machine. You knew I would. I knew you could. Difference is everything. He paused. Ever wonder why I picked you? She shrugged. Because I was wrong about you. Because you admitted you were wrong. Most people cling to their mistakes. You let yours teach you. Outside, the rain slowed to a drizzle. Emily stepped onto the sidewalk, breathing in the damp air. Across the street, a homeless man huddled under a newspaper. She hesitated, then gestured to the café. Hungry? He nodded, and she held the door open wide like a chandelier's light. Emily thought she'd lost everything, until a single coffee cup rewrote her future. But here's the kicker. What if your biggest mistake is actually your greatest opportunity? Stay until the final second to hear the question Tom asked Emily that changed everything, and might just change how you see the world. Spoiler: the answer isn't in a wine glass.